appreciate Andy and Lindsay for all their support and guidance in the Continuum Scholars Program from May last summer. So through the enriching and insightful conversations that we had with these amazing mentors and two great participants, Eric and Zach, I could develop my thoughts to share in today's presentation. So I am, this is the original. So I am currently teaching the Education 200 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion course in the Education Department. In this course, we learn about from diversity from the socio-cultural perspective, about how to apply our understanding of diverse students and their cultural experiences to implement culturally responsive teaching. One of the main topics that we discuss in this course is the sense of self. So my students have, around the topic, my students have just completed their first project, which is about presenting their origins, heritage, and their identity. So what they do is they research their family history, focusing on their ethnic and racial backgrounds. And they present this by applying various psychosocial development theories that learned in the class. We just all use all this learning together in the classroom. While I was, because that gives them the idea that how all these backgrounds of them affect who they are today. While I was teaching my students to prepare the presentations, I got this idea. Looks like it would be great for me to take the same approach to prepare this Continuum Scholars presentation. So yeah, in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about how I am, as a educational scholar and teacher educator, I'm carrying out my research in education. But before then, first of all, I want to talk about my family history, especially by highlighting how my mom's legacy has shaped who I am today. So my identity as a Christian education researcher and teacher educator working at Hope College. This is my mom. I need to, first of all, talk about her, especially talk about the roots of my faith and my identity as a teacher and a researcher. She is now 83 years old, but definitely she had her childhood when she was 11 years old. It was, that year was 1950, when the Korean War broke out. I liked listening to my mom's stories from when she was young. Before June 1950, she used to live in the northern part of the country. But soon she had to flee to the south because of the war at such a young age. She had to walk for several months to reach the southern end of the Korean peninsula. And she lived there in Busan for a long time. One day, she told me one of her memories that a small incident happened during while she was fleeing. So my mom went to wash a handful of rice that she barely managed to get. But on the way, she met an old man, and the old man asked her to do an errand. And yes, she said yes. So she left the rice with him to do an errand for him. But when she came back, both the man and the rice were gone. She still remembers the day so clearly. She cried all day long, feeling so frustrated, thinking of her family members, very hungry, and being scared of her mom being mad at her. One of the stories that I still remember. But here's another story that I like to, this is my all-time favorite story. It was when she was 7 and invited to go to a nearby church by a group of Sunday school teachers and kids who were walking around the village to evangelize the community. So yeah, my mom started to go to church secretly. by climbing over the fence. Because at the time, it was in the 1940s, my grandmother still was following the traditional Korean religion, so she didn't like her daughter to go to church. But anyway, my mom had to go to church because she liked going to church. And there, she learned how to read and write, and then she met Jesus. Until then, before going to church and learning how to read and write, she hadn't been able to go to school because Korea at the time was still a poor country. And my mom was the youngest of a family, particularly poor family. And additionally, at the time in Korea, the idea was male respect was very strong, so she could go to school. But anyway, in the church, she could open her eyes to the world by listening to God's word and cultivating her faith and learning how to read. But unfortunately, she couldn't get higher education after that because the Korean War broke out long after. But after a long time in her life, she became a wise and supportive leader of the community because she always took care of many people around her. She was more passionate than anyone else to share her life with others who were in need. So she served for nearly 40 years at a local Red Cross organization, caring for her neighbors who were in need and isolated and neglected and were in different difficult circumstances. But in fact, she had a dream that she couldn't really achieve, which was to become an elementary school teacher. To her, an elementary school teacher was truly the best job in the world because she still remembers the heart-beating moment of learning how to read and write. And she believed working as a teacher is really the best way to love people. And because the teacher can help students can grow and develop, which is a good way to follow God's will. But unfortunately, because of a lack of education, she could not achieve the dream. But she was never sad because she had a desire for her daughter to become an elementary school teacher instead of her. So after some wondering in the career path, okay, what do I want to do? I finally followed her wish. In the year of 2005, I became an elementary school teacher and spent several years filled with passion for teaching, like overflowing with ideas and hopes for better education. But soon, I began to recognize the serious issue of education inequality in Korea. Due to the parents' different socioeconomic status and then different educational levels, the quantity and quality of education that is given to each child differs greatly. And this gap directly affected students' classroom achievement. And I also witnessed my fellow educators teaching the classroom were dealing with so many difficult issues because of this gap affecting the students, various needs of students for them, all of them to learn. Then I started to think about, I may want to go to study more. I may want to develop my professionalism as a teacher. So I should study education in more systematically and then extensively. So that's how and why I decided to go abroad to study education, and I came to the United States. And I, knowing how the students were at the time struggling to learn language, the mandatory subject of English in Korea, I wanted to learn effective teaching method that can support students' language learning. I came to the United States, and I began my life as an international graduate student at the University of Connecticut. Then I discovered a subject that I would like to study with passion for a long time afterward through my personal experience of taking graduate classes as a student. In the first semester in graduate school, I was so nervous and stressed. So I could not eat anything at all day, and I often had a stomach ache. I was very nervous, and I was very quiet. So I know you wouldn't believe I was quiet, but I was quiet. I spent the whole class without saying anything, just listening to others. Then one day, I was introduced to Vygotsky's theory, social cultural theory, and I learned the concept of MKO, more knowledgeable other, who guides and helps the learner in the mediated learning process, which was the key to understanding his theory. Then some questions were arising in my mind. What about the less knowledgeable other? Who practically exists in the classroom? Why wasn't this mentioned or discussed in his theory? Then how can less successful or less knowledgeable learner learn successfully? I became more interested in exploring this because in my native language environment, I was always a successful and active student, but in the US English-only graduate classroom environment, I was quiet and shy and not active and seemingly less knowledgeable learner. It was actually my first time ever experience of being a struggling learner, but it was a very important experience, a moment that determined the future direction of my research in education. So these two slides, were from the two presentations that I made in my graduate courses. So as you've seen here, what I was interested in developing at the time in the graduate classes was I was thinking someone is more knowledgeable in one field. It doesn't mean that he or she is always more knowledgeable in other fields. I strongly believe that every student holds valuable knowledge that they can contribute to others in a learning situation. So how can this sharing of knowledge can happen in an effective manner for everyone to learn and grow together? So that was my main interest at the time. While I was struggling to adjust to a new linguistic environment as the only international grad students in a building speaking English as a second language, I spent nearly every class in silence without speaking a word during my first semester. But the truth was, I had a lot to share about my understanding of the theories that I was learning and my previous teaching experiences teaching Korean students, my literacy teaching, my teaching of English to Korean students. I had literally a lot to share, but I just couldn't and didn't. So actually, everyone can become a more knowledgeable other. Who can help less knowledgeable other in some areas help that learn in a successful manner. I was once a quiet ESL international students, but with proper guidance of my professors and classmates who were helping the process of this interpersonal communications happening in the classroom, I could be better. I started to speak up. I started to share my thoughts and knowledge and experiences. So that, and especially how I was personally understanding the classroom content being shared in the class as a learning community. So I'm showing this model that I learned from my doctoral advisor, who is Dr. Ronald Beguero, who is an internationally renowned creativity scholar in the area of creative learning in an education setting. So he viewed, and other creative researchers viewed the phenomenon of learning as a process, people developing their creativity through this interpersonal communications. Creativity, whether of legendary thinkers or artists, always begins with a small, personally meaningful ideas or insights within an individual's mind, meaning creativity. And it becomes a driving force for growth when expressed and shared with others, affecting not only the individual, but others as well in this communication process in like everyday setting. And through time, effort, experiences, those individual ideas through conversations with others and exchanges, they can develop into this professional level creativity. Oh, somehow I don't like this one again. The proceed. And it can ultimately develop into the legendary level creativity, which is called Big C, although it's rare. So this is how the Beggero and Kaufman's 4C model of creativity pursues regarding how the creativity develops from the small thing, from the big thing. Yes, creativity scholars believe that in the process of learning, all students undergo a creative process, that they have these personally meaningful ideas, insights in their mind, and they get to share those ideas with others. And then they hear others and develop, create their understanding. So learning is a creative process. If the teacher understands the importance of this increasing students' creative expression around the topic that they are learning in the classroom, they naturally focus on the importance of increasing students' creative expression of learning during class time, allowing students to express their new and personally meaningful ideas, insights, and interpretations about the new content they are learning. By the way, at this point, let me just switch the context of my story to the other part of the presentation, the diversity. The linguistic diversity of students is rapidly increasing in US classrooms. Looking at the various statistics data, we have already more than 10% of our K-12 students enrolled in public schools. There are emergent bilinguals, often called English learners. The number of emergent bilingual students is increasing exponentially. In other words, the Hope education students, the teacher candidates now I'm teaching and we're teaching, they're more likely to have at least 2 or 3 emergent bilingual students in their classroom. If not, more than 2 or 3 in the classroom. But the problem is, the US K-12 classrooms are mostly an English-only environment. And still, the deficit ideology of that views bilingual, bicultural students are deficient and problematic perpetuate. Instead of acknowledging more than bilingual students' diverse backgrounds and identities as their competence and potentials, and instead of actively supporting and promoting their whole personal identity development as a bilingual speaker, the ESL education in the United States, in the US classrooms and schools and classrooms has so far been directing students to just endure and survive until in the English-only learning environment, until they adapt to the monoglossic learning environment. What did that one language-only, monoglossic, English-only teaching result in? Yes, emergent bilingual students have shown significantly low average scores in reading and math, and higher school dropout rates compared to their English native speaking counterparts for a long time. Not surprisingly, the education environment that discourages students from speaking and expressing themselves is hindering their quality of learning and inhibiting their creativity. According to literature, it takes at least 5 to 7 years for emergent bilingual students to attain the language proficiency to learn at their grade level, not successful at the grade level. That means during those 7 years, emergent bilingual students wouldn't be able to effectively express their personally meaningful ideas and interpretations of the content they are learning. That means they cannot properly use the tool, the mind tool for learning, which is the language. Because we are limiting their use of language into only English, some parts of their linguistic repertoire. So they look like they're not incapable of being a member of the learning community because they're not contributing to the classroom learning. So the theory that I'm exploring and spreading with other bilingual educational scholars attempting to transform the reality is translanguaging pedagogy. Ophelia Garcia, she defined translanguaging as the development of a speaker's full linguistic repertoire, going beyond the boundaries of named languages. Traditionally, the monoglossic research on bilingualism, that in the monoglossic research on the bilingualism, bilinguals L1, native, home language, and L2, a new language, were always separate. They're different entities. But in contrast, a heteroglossic view of a paradigm for viewing and conducting research on bilingualism has recently emerged. So heteroglossia refers to the multiple variations of voices within those languages. Thus, it describes all the different ways people speak to one another, different ways. Current research on translanguaging from this heteroglossic paradigm does not consider languages from their two separate registers. Now, we explain the existence of multiple language varieties as a unitary system. So we avoid this view, seeing languages as separate and different. And I employ this heteroglossic perspective to study bilinguals' entire language use and literacy development through a translanguaging paradigm, highlighting that bilinguals have one whole linguistic system. So here's one example. So my two children are fully bilingual. They always speak English in their classroom because they are cognitive aware that, metacognitive aware that they are supposed to speak in English in the classroom. But at home, we mix languages. We interchangeably alternate between two languages. And they often get to use this sentence like, not mom, 엄마, mom, can you give me the 빛? In Korean, it means calm. They need what 빛 is, which is a calm in English. But they somehow just mix these languages because it's so natural in their bilingual brain. In the whole system, the language repertoire, all the items are being used in a bilingual manner. The supportive and effective learning environment for emergent bilingual students supported by the translanguage pedagogy is the translanguaging classroom, which is where the teacher and students collaborate to deploy their full linguistic repertoire for teaching and learning. In this classroom, bilingualism is the norm. And they really learn in deeply creative and critical ways to develop ideas together and create this democratic and multilingual environment where everyone can express their ideas and learn from each other. So I want to quickly show how this teacher is teaching. His language is English, but he knows some Spanish, but he doesn't speak Polish. But you'll see how this teacher is supporting his students. Some speak Spanish, some speak Polish in the classroom for everyone to learn the content more effectively. Let me just show quickly.
And what does number 1 say on remember? Trabajando al revés, correct? Work backwards? Does everyone agree with that? The lesson that followed it, I try and make sure whatever the word problem is, I have to adapt it for the Spanish speakers and the Polish speakers because some of the language in the problem that's written in English, it's harder for them to understand. Even for the kids who only speak English, the problem is just as difficult for them as well. So the translanguaging really helps them not only get motivated, but also to understand the concept behind the problem. Hay dos problemas, ¿sí? Okay, the first one, Oscar, could you read your problem? Wait, louder, slower. Go ahead. I like to put the kids' names in the problem, so I'll change that around. But you know, when you are translanguaging, it's good to save everything, so you don't have to do everything over and over again. So that helps too. Tiff, do you want to give it a shot, or want to try it? Okay. Now, Tiffany's mom speaks Polish, and Tiffany is learning Polish. Go ahead, Tiff. Nice and loud.
So the teacher has written the same prompt in Polish. Prepared this, although he doesn't speak Polish.
Okay, now did that make sense to you, some of it? Some of it, okay. So since I don't speak Polish, Matthew usually helps me with the, what do you call that thing? iPad, okay, yeah, translate, okay?
We go back to, indeed, the Bible shows us very clearly the affirmation of diversity, linguistic diversity that God had planned for a long time ago. There is a biblical passage that demonstrates multilingual implications very beautifully. In the Pentecost event in Acts, chapter 2, a miracle of speaking occurred during Apostle Paul's sermon. There, during the sermon, people speaking many different languages heard the gospel preached in many different languages. So in their own native languages. Significantly, the Pentecost event was not a miracle of hearing, which means everyone was being able to understand like one language. It was a miracle of speaking because the apostles were preaching in multiple languages. So everyone gathering there could hear the gospel and understand the gospel in their language of the heart. So this gives us the implication of bilingual teaching, and because students in this chapter gives us the idea that students' various languages are not a barrier to their learning. The languages can be the tools for their thinking and understanding, for all of them to learn together. So once again, I confirm the value and meaning of my research in the field of bilingual and multilingual education based on my faith through this chapter. Since joining Hope College in 2020, I participated in the Little Read program in 2020. At the time, Deb and Dinah was leading the program. I loved to just join the program in a way, and I got to know that, I think I can create 2 different language versions of interactive read aloud videos by implementing translanguaging with the students who could not read either English or Spanish to read the shared book at the time. So I created a Korean version translanguaging interactive read aloud video, and I helped my colleague to create a Chinese version. And Deb shared those videos in the community with schools and classrooms. And this led to a positive feedback from the students and their families because by watching the videos, the students could actively participate in a reading, like collaborative reading and discussion that was happening in the classroom because they knew what was going on. They understood the story using all of their language repertoires. And in the year of 2021, I received a grant from the Community Foundation of Holland, New Zealand, to give 40 local K-12 students on online tutoring, bilingual tutoring that was for helping them read informational, like nonfiction text. So what I did was I trained these 10 Hope College multilingual students. I teach the concept of bilingualism so they can model how mature bilingual reader reads this informational text for learning. So they met the students one-on-one on Zoom at the time because it was during the pandemic. And the students are learning how to actively use their bilingual ability to understand the topics in the content area by reading, by fully harnessing their bilingual knowledge experience by translanguaging. So this is literally the slides that I'm going to use tonight for giving the teacher PD as part of the Mellon Community-Based Foundation project. It started last year, so it's still underway. My dear colleague Deb and Diana and I are working on this. We want to provide local elements. This is for teachers at this time. We're focusing on providing teachers resources and ideas that they can implement translanguaging, multilingual, bilingual teaching approaches in the classroom. So we are providing, we're teaching, spreading the idea of translanguage pedagogy and providing the essential resources they need to create multilingual translanguage learning space in the classroom. This makes me seeing all the research projects that I've been working on. I get to think about, why do I want to do this? Why I'm so into the idea of translanguaging, by the way? Because this is about the classroom environments that I'm really passionate about creating and support teachers creating in their classroom. Where peace, my mom was holding in her mind for a long time. Because she experienced a harsh war at the age of 11, wanted and needed nothing more than peace. The reason why she was able to invest her whole life supporting others and helping others was that she passionately pursued the value of peace in mind during a long time. And living in each and every day as an educational researcher and a teacher educator at Hope College, holding the hope and passion for education based on the value of peace passed down to me from my mom. Here is a picture book, originally written by Japanese children's book author Hamada Geiko. The title is, "What is Peace Like?" And the author provides many different ways how peace can be defined and described from the children's perspective. And one page gives us this writing. In Korean it says, 평화란 내가 태어나길 잘했다고 하는 것, 너와 내가 친구가 되는 것, which means peace is when you say, I love that you are in this world. Peace is saying, I'm glad I have you. You're different from me, but it's great that you are in this world. So with this in my mind, I spread and share this bilingualism and bilingual teaching with local teachers. For more and more teachers to learn about bilingualism, how to support emergent bilingual students in the classroom so they can create this multilingual environment where everyone can succeed and collaborate to learn. And also, as a quality researcher, I share my research with other members of the bilingual research community, focusing on what's happening in the interactions between the teacher and the students when they learn in the bilingual way, when all these resources are being used so that they can learn and in a creative and critical way. I kind of capture those moments and analyze the patterns found and spread those ideas because I want us, the bilingual education researchers, to deepen and broaden our understanding of this language, multiple varieties existing in a unitary system. So, yes, all of these small ideas and miracles, and they're from the values of peace that I inherited from my mom. I really hope that the classroom where our students will learn will be a space where they learn and grow together, celebrating the blessedness of linguistic diversity, saying to each other, you are different from me, but it's great that you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a delight. We have a couple of minutes for questions, probably about 10. So if you have thoughts in reaction to Dr. Han and the vision that she's cast, it would be great to hear from you. What questions do you have?
I have a question.
Yeah, you do.
Mihyn, thank you so much for a really wonderful presentation. Maybe at Hope College, when we teach, we can't always immediately apply translanguaging. But I think about your experience as an international student. What can we do to help creative learning processes for international students at Hope College? Is there something that comes out of your research for that?
Mainly, my research has been focusing on the K-12, but definitely I can use my own experiences working in a program as international students, and after I know about this pedagogy, which is about you can show your respect and acceptance for their language, multilingual language use in learning. So one example is that I still use this method in, I'm sorry about the mic, I just realized that it's just not working. So when I was learning and listening to the lecture before, I always use both languages. I mean, in interchangeable, they are mixed and they're alternated. Because to capture the great important ideas, it's not that, oh, I should write this in English, I should write this in Korean, but it just happened naturally. That shows two languages are so essential to process the understanding even. So maybe you can prepare some pre-learning activities that, we're going to do this research activity. I'm going to discuss this in the following class. So you may want to check out this video, which is a Korean source that you can check out related to the classroom topic. And then use the source. And you can also give some, this openness that you can cite sources written in other languages. It doesn't always have to be the source written in English or from the US context. So providing some openness to the students' choices so they can utilize all of their language repertoires. And then if you have more than one speaker of the same language, you can think about some collaborative and pair learning that they can utilize their home language to discuss the ideas. And then they can produce the language, the outcomes in either English only, or Korean only, or mixed manner. So that way they can really boost their learning by using all their linguistic sources. Yeah.
I'm coming for you. Maybe this way. I'll change my mind.
So I'm biased because I'm working on the project with Mihyn, but I just need everyone here to know how transformative this work has been for the teachers we've worked with. And Mihyn, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to that, but it is a mind shift and exciting. The teachers we've worked with have talked about how this knowledge and what Mihyn is working on and presenting on radically changes their interactions with students in such beautiful and positive ways. And just building on what Andy asked about, I think something I've learned so much from you is disrupting these prejudices and assumptions we have about other languages. So even Spanglish, oftentimes it's sort of seen as a demeaned, like we look at it as not right? It's messy, it's improper grammar, right? And disrupting that even in our own thinking about languages and realizing how monolithic a lot of our educational structures are. But anyway, framing it positively, I'm wondering if you could share some of the teacher reactions and moments of empowerment that they've received from learning from you.
So when you hear me, the beautiful implication of multilingual use in the classroom, you may say, yeah, it makes sense, right? But when you have taught in the same classroom with the same scope for a long time, only just teaching in a monoglossic manner, we always speak in English. We always write in English. It's sometimes hard for the teachers to think out of the box. That once they get to know about the value of allowing students to use their whole entire language repertoire, they were thinking, wait a minute. Oh, I want to try this. And from the small moment of translanguaging read aloud, they implemented after they came to us to learn about how to implement it. Students were their responses were so enthusiastic, so powerful, because she said, one of the teachers said, her students was listening to the read aloud of the book in Arabic. And because one volunteer was willing to read a book with the teacher in Arabic for the learner, and the student cried. I think the student was in first grade. she said to the teacher, "This is my first time ever experience. My language is used in a school, in a classroom." She was very proud, but very emotional. So these kinds of miracles, small miracles of speaking, has been happening in our nearby our community schools. So this is what Deb and I are doing by in our Melon Community Project by equipping teachers with resources for multilingual teaching and learning.
I have a really interesting question for you, Dr. Han. So as a trilingual, I've always been struggling of finding ways to improve my second or third language, being English or Thai or Korean, whatever. And I always make jokes to my friends, "Oh, I'm not trilingual. I know 0 languages." Because my argument is that translanguaging it's a way for me to learn and achieve new knowledge, but I don't know. I always thought it would be maybe an inhibiting factor that maybe avoids improvement in the second or third language that you're learning. So that's my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that interesting question. So I definitely understand because as a bilingual speaker, and I personally experience, like sometimes I'm being confused between, so I should talk about this, then what should the word that I want to use? And then when you add one more, like you, being a trilingual, definitely you feel like this confusing thoughts. Am I actually improving, or is it kind of inhibiting my language use? But I think we can start that conversation from our perception of the language system. If we perceive the languages as like, oh, they're separate, my first, my second, my third, so I'm good, I'm best in my first, but I'm kind of not very confident in my second and third, definitely you can feel that way. But if you start to view yourself as a trilingual who has a totally different brain system, developing all the mixed one language system at the same time, you can say, yes, I'm developing my whole linguistic repertoire, although sometimes I work more in English, sometimes I use more Thai, other times I get to speak in Korean in some situations. But through the process of you use all the language repertoires, then you get to develop your one language system. And that's where your metacognitive linguistic ability is growing. So there are many different aspects of languages, right? Languaging. So it's not just about, yeah, I can fluently say in this situation, but you know the context and you know the appropriate manner of using the language, which language, in which manner, and how to fluently communicate with others with different backgrounds and experiences. I think there are multiple points for assessing linguistic ability, not just about how fluent I am, how my the pronunciation is great. So I want us to study more about how we are perceiving our language system. Are we still using this monoglossic view or heteroglossia that we can see? I'm the holistic, bilingual, multilingual speaker, developing my language system every day.
Along those lines, for someone who is a English speaker first and is in a classroom where they are learning, or the other way around, if you were a Korean speaker first, and we often teach second languages in an immersive way where we don't use the first language as part of the education. Once you reach a certain point, right? That like Spanish 1 or German. I took German. German 1. We're gonna flip back and forth between English and German. But then you get to a point where you say, no, now it's just in German, and come along. And if you can't, you suffer. I feel like when I was studying a second language, I feel like I was doing this, like I was trying to do this, and I feel like the classroom didn't encourage that because the classroom was encouraging you to learn proper German. Yeah. So it sounds like so much of your study has been about equipping teachers in the United States who are primarily English instructors to incorporate second and third additional languages. Has there been much study the other way around of teaching English speakers, or anybody else for that matter, a second language in that other context, and how the heteroglossic approach versus the mono is effective or is not effective? It's sort of piggybacking on your idea a little bit.
I get it. So this is an interesting finding from one study that there are actually more than one. So there are different groups of bilingual researchers. Some believe that to strengthen bilinguals, we have to have them separate languages. So dual language, for example. So they are forbidden to use the second language in the classroom. They're supposed to speak the same first language. But the researchers have observed what they're really speaking in the dual language classroom. So, okay, this is Spanish hours from noon to 2:30, so you only speak Spanish to learn in these hours. But they are whispering in English. They're producing those worksheets and writings in English, but they're exchanging ideas with their peers and secretly speaking two languages, alternating, exchanging, and going back and forth and combining. So we can say we can really literally create the environment where languages can be separated, because that's not the way how bilingual brain is working. Because they are one person, they are not two people.
Perhaps like me, you still have questions. I am sure Dr. Han would be happy to follow up with you. But would you just join me in thanking Dr. Han for her excellent presentation?
Thank you. This is a Korean way that I vow to show my thankfulness.